Alright, I said I was gonna do this a while back, but I didn't get around to it. So my goal here was to have this little tiny solar setup and then put basically like a kilowatt of energy into my car every night, which is only about 5 miles worth of driving, but still it's pretty cool to have clean things. Unfortunately, the computer of the car didn't accept my energy. I guess it judged that the power source was too small, even though the voltage and everything was correct. So I didn't get to follow through on my goal. So what I've been using this for is basically to power my computer and my phone every night. And that's been pretty fun. It's nice knowing that you're using your own energy that you got from the sun, and I like it. So what I did here with my little setup is these solar panels that have these wires in the back. One has like a plus and one has a negative to make it real user-friendly, universal language to know which one's the positive and which one's the negative. And you have a choice. You can either connect them in a parallel series or, a parallel connection or series connection. And if you do the parallel connection, basically there's this adapter. I take the positives of both panels, put them into the adapter, the negatives of both panels, put them into the adapter, and then I connect these long 25-foot wires here into the adapter and then into the charge controller. Now, that would be a good way to do it if my charge controller could only handle a certain voltage that was fairly small, like right around 12 volts, 15 volts, then that would have been what I would have done. But since my charge controller is rated at 30 volts, I decided to do a series connection, which is where I take the positive of one panel, plug it into the negative of the other panel, and then I take the other remaining negative and positive and plug those into the charge controller. Now, this is good for two reasons. One is you tend to lose a little bit of energy as it travels from the solar panel to the charge controller through the wire. These are really thick wires, so they don't lose very much energy, but they still lose a tiny bit. Since they're so thick, it's a very tiny bit. But if you do 24 volts instead of 12 volts, then percentage-wise, the amount of energy you're losing is less. Like, let's do a super oversimplistic example, which won't apply to this because these wires are so thick, it's gonna be a smaller version of this. But let's say you lost like 10% because you had a really thin wire. So, like, it wouldn't even be a percentage, it'd just be like, traveling from the solar panel to the charge controller, you lose like 1 volt out of the 12 volts. So that'd be a little shy of 10%, it'd be just over 8%. Well, if you lost that same amount with a 24 volt current, now it'd only be 1 volt out of the 24 volt. So now it'd be just over 4%. So you can see how a larger percentage of your energy would be getting to the charge controller to put into the battery. The other reason, and the more important reason, is by having this 24 volt current, the little charge controller box I have that takes energy from the solar panels and charges the batteries does not start putting energy into the batteries until it hits a certain voltage. I don't know what that is, whether it's 6 volts or 8 volts or 10 volts, but basically it takes a while before it starts doing it. When you send a 12 volt current, the sun has to get to a certain intensity before it's high enough that the charge controller starts putting energy into the batteries. Now, by doing this series connection and upping the voltage to 24 volts, it'll be a much earlier time in the day that I hit that voltage, because instead of it having to hit this big percentage of 12, it only has to hit this small percentage of 24. And it will continue charging later in the day when the sun loses its intensity again, because 24 volts is so much more. So that's why I chose to do a series connection, because the higher voltage just travels better and it gives the charge controller longer to charge up the batteries. It gives me a larger window of opportunity to collect this solar energy. Now, once I come down here, you can see I did just a simple parallel connection with these jumper cables. Now this is the opposite. Instead of doing the series, I did the parallel, and there's a reason for this. The little charge inverter I had is designed to take a 12 volt direct current and invert it into a 110 volt AC current. So it's designed to receive a 12 volt DC current. So there's no reason for me to put these in a series and change it into a 24 volt current. Had these been 6 volt batteries, there would have been a reason to put them into a series, but they're 12 volt batteries. So instead I put them into the parallel series so that the current would remain 12 volts. The other nice thing about that is having the two batteries like that, that will increase the ampage, which will make them give energy for a longer period of time. So it works out really, really well. At least it would have had I been charging my car. But since all I'm doing is running my computer and my phone, basically I'm generating a whole lot more energy than I need to use. And unfortunately, I don't really use a lot of electricity. We have an inefficient refrigerator and an inefficient dryer, but both of those I don't really have a way of connecting into, and they would use more than I generate anyway. But all the things I use aside from that isn't shared for the whole house, I don't use very much. I basically just use my phone, my computer, and my blender. And so basically it's a lot less energy than I generate. I could have just gotten one solar panel and been fine, and just gotten one battery, but I didn't know that that's how things were going to work out. I assumed I was going to be putting this energy into my car, and I wanted to be throwing 5 miles worth of driving onto my car every day as opposed to 2.5, so that's why I went with this. Like, obviously I would like a big system that just powers the whole house, but I don't have that kind of money, so I'm working within my means. It is fun working with the solar panel. It's fun learning solar hands-on experience like this, and hopefully I'll make some good choices in life and someday be able to get my own place and actually run it with solar. That's something I would love to do, so I need to make the correct decisions to get me set up that could be an option. Anyway, I thought I would share that with everyone since I did say I was going to do that and then postponed it for so long. So that's how I hooked up the little solar setup.